Hello and welcome to another Broken Meeple review, and this is the first of 2 to 4 new releases that I'm going to be reviewing for Empress 4. This is a publisher that I give a lot of praise. You know, they don't always make games that I go mind-blowing, you know, like I love to bits, although Hanami Koji would be an exception to that, a top 10 game for me. But they always consistently make games I like. I haven't played a single game from them where I go, oh, that was a bit naff. You know, each of their games has usually been pretty good in some way. So to review another 4 of their games, you know, 2 will be coming out soon, I believe, at Essen or after Essen. 2 I've got here now, Jiguan and Trial of the Temples. I'm excited to get these to the table. So I'm going to do a video for each one. So I'm not going to do a double bill or anthology. I think they each are big enough to deserve their own game. So first up, let's tackle Trial of the Temples. This is not exactly a sequel to the original Mystery of the Temples that they did in a smaller box. You know, that's a totally separate game. Although there are some similarities into the fact that you've got this round, almost like rondel of what exactly you're doing. What happens in this is that each of you is basically a mage in a big tournament, and theme is somewhat light in this one. I wouldn't exactly go in this for the theme, but what essentially is happening is that there are 3 segments of this board, and you're trying to rise up the tracks in each one. There are 3 trials, one for fire, one for water, and one for sand. And basically, they're all very generic tracks. You've got a disc on there, you try to level it up as high as you can, you'll get more points at the end the higher you get, but you get bonuses based on, you know, when you cover spots, and you skip over other players, so timing is key as to when you level up and when you don't. But the main crux of this is all these tiles surrounding a big, almost like clock design around the edge of this board. And these tiles flip over from day to night, depending on what round it is, you know, how far like the sunset moves. It's done in a really cool, mechanical, but it's done in a neat way where different tiles are going to flip at different points during the game. This is randomized at the start, so the tiles themselves aren't going to be in the same position every time, so you've got different setups, and this could affect the way you play. But the idea is that you'll put an Archmage out onto one of these temple tiles around the outside, and then each player will do so in turn. But where you place it is key, because when you resolve the resources for what you gain, which could be like fire resources, sand resources, you know, that kind of thing, well, you're gaining crystals more than anything else, but your crystals are of different colours. So you've got like sand crystal, fire crystal, water crystal, whatever. But where you place the Archmage is important, because what happens is you get resources based on the tile you're on, as well as, and these are printed on the top left, but you also get the resource at the bottom on all tiles in left and right, up until it either gets blocked by this central barrier tile and another player's Meeple. So if somebody's gone really close to you, then you're not going to get very much. But if they've spaced themselves out because they want to get a lot of resources as well, you might be able to pick up quite a lot of nice stuff. But there is a restriction that you can't completely surround another player, so you can't completely nerf them. And if somebody goes out of their way to like annoy you, they better make certain they're doing it and getting enough resources themselves, because if they just do it to be spiteful, then chances are they're hurting their own game as well. Once you've got these resources, you then take it in turns to spend these tokens in order to level up on the trial tracks. And when you spend the crystals, you level up, you skip over players, you get bonuses. And these bonuses are mostly in way of these cool, that's called spell cores. You have a board in front of you with a lot of special powers that you can unlock. And basically, when you put a core in one of those slots, you unlock the power. It could be points. It could allow you to do a conversion of one colour to another. It might gain you bonus resources when you collect them in the resource phase. It might allow you to store crystals from turn to turn because they all scrub at the end of a round. So that forces you to use it or lose it. But, you know, it's cool to have this flexibility. But it's also a little puzzle in itself, because the cores come in 4 different colours, and you can't have a colour duplicated in any row or column, and you'll get bonus points at the end of the game for how many of these rows and columns you meet. So you've got this little puzzle in front of you, as well as the puzzle in the middle with leveling up the trial tracks. And it's not particularly like mind-bending. I mean, these aren't the most difficult decisions you're going to make, but certainly there's a lot of tension for where you're putting your Meeple out on the temple tiles. And of course, timing is paramount with going up those trial tracks, because you might be lagging behind on the water track for a bit, but then you've got 2 players that are above you. So it's like, well, hang on, if I play the water crystal to go to the next spot, I can skip over 2 players and only spend those crystals to get all the way above them. Granted, they might leapfrog over me next, but I'm gaining a lot of extra leeway on that track for little outlay. And that's the sort of thing you're trying to think of on all 3 tracks. Do you go for a balanced approach where you do all 3 tracks, or do you just focus entirely on one track and then the rest are, will make up for later? Do you spend more of your time getting spell cores? So rather than going up the temple tracks, are you just trying to fill up your board with all those cores and unlock all those cool abilities? Do you do a balance of both? There's a few paths to victory, but not like tons of different ones. I'd say you're basically focusing on a temple track, focusing on your board, or doing a balance of both, that kind of thing. It's not like there's tons of different ways to win the game, but the tactics of where you put your Archmage in those temple tiles, how they all flip, because when they flip, the night time gives you a lot of different stuff compared to the day version. So are you gonna, when's the best time? You look in one round and it's like, I can get a lot of crystals if I go there, but then are you going to block me in the second I go there? It's like, are you going to go in there and hamper how many I can get? You've got to pay attention to the other players. It's very interactive in that respect. I can't, apart from putting my meeple and blocking you, I'm not directly screwing you over, if that makes sense. But, you've got to watch what they're doing on the trial tracks. You need to know when's the best time to leapfrog them. Do you think a player's going to leapfrog you? In which case, maybe I should get out of the way first so that they don't get in the benefit. So it's not completely directly interactive, but certainly this is not a multiplayer solitaire game. You play it like a solitaire game, you're done. You won't win this game. You have to pay attention. And that is a plus point for it. The rules themselves, not particularly complicated. The rule book is fairly easy to go through. There's one or two little fiddly aspects with the spell cores themselves and some of the abilities, but other than that, it's generally quite an easy one to get round. I like the way that the tiles are curved at the bottom, so they slot nicely around this 3-piece round board, so it looks like a cool clock face. It slots in very nicely, looks the part. The artwork's pretty decent in this, very colourful on the board, because you've got this, looking at the back here again, you've got a blue, red and yellow board, then you've got the day and night tiles, you've got your spell board. It's a very pretty game with these little plastic crystals and plastic translucent cubes as well. I was expecting probably more crummy components, but I was quite surprised that this one actually goes out of its way to be nice and pretty on the table. Now, the boards you have in front of you, I say boards, they're mainly just paper boards. So they're not exactly the best boards in the world, but it's not as bad as Realm of Sand, where I found those were really bendy and it was like paramount that it needed to be flat. Here, it's not such a bad thing if they do bend, but yeah, if you're one of these people who likes to laminate their own paperboard, you maybe want to do it on this. It's flimsy card, so I'll leave that to your discretion. But I haven't had any problems with them bending out of shape or anything yet, so like I say, I think it will be fine. So, gameplay itself, this has a ranking system much like their other games, and they call strategy 4 out of 5. I'd say that's pretty accurate. I mean, you do have to think about when you're going to leapfrog other players, when you're going to get out of the way, what you're doing each round with all the different tactics. There's a fair amount you got to think about. Luck, 1 out of 5. I'd actually say that's pretty accurate as well, because there's no decks you draw cards from. You know which temple tiles are likely to flip. The round tile dictates how often, how far that barrier tile moves, and that dictates how many tiles flip from day to night. It doesn't fluctuate that much, and it's not like you're looking at every temple tile saying, oh, what's on the back, what's on the back, what's on the back. No, you're not doing that. But you don't draw from a deck of cards, there's no dice, so yeah, luck is pretty minimal in this game. So if that's something that you're looking for, like a lightish game that doesn't have a lot of luck in it, then this could be one to look at. On top of that, you've got interaction 4 out of 5. Yeah, definitely. I've just explained how that works. So 4 out of 5, definitely. Weight, 3 out of 5. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate as well. I mean, it's not a complicated game, but there's a lot to consider with where you put your Archmage, what resources you need, the fact you've got to spend them or you lose them, what combos you can do, when to leapfrog, when not to. There's a lot to consider. This is not I wouldn't call this midweight, though. I still think it's a light game, but I'd be lying out of my back teeth if I called it anywhere near next step or gateway level. This is just basically a light game that's not something I would want to shove in front of new players very easily, but I think if you're used to Emperor S4 or you like these kind of tactical style strategy games, then this is one to look out for. I was pleasantly surprised by this. Now, variety and replay value, a little hit and miss, because, as I said, there's not many paths to victory you can follow, and even though you've got this board with the different abilities you can do, they're not that varied in themselves. I mean, you've got 4 that are basically just gain an extra resource when you gain that resource. So you've got one for yellow, blue, red, whatever. And then you've got a couple for storage. You've got a couple that are just generic points. You've got 4 that are, when you can convert X to X, and there's just 4 varieties of them. So it's not that the replay value is bad, but this isn't one that I'm going to say, right, I've played this game, now I'm going to play it again immediately. Now, I could put this back on the shelf and go, you know what, I'll bring it out again. I'll play it from now and again, I'll bring it to a game night, but I'm not looking ahead to think, ooh, when's the next time I can play this game? But like I said, with Emperor 4, it's not necessarily about that. Their games are just consistently good. This one is another good, solid game. I think there's going to be some fans of this one. I think, I mean, it's got no relevance really to Mystery of the Temple, so I'm not even going to try and compare it to that one. But all in all, it's a solid game. Looks the part, tackles the mind, doesn't blow it out of proportion or anything, but does reward the fact that it's got low luck and a high amount of player interaction. Something we don't tend to see a good combination of in light games particularly, so it's refreshing to see it now. So overall, this gets a solid 7 for me. I think it's a solid one that you should pick out and have a look at if you're in any way a fan of Emperor 4's games. So that's it for me. I'll see you on the next Emperor 4 review I do for them, and regardless of whether you've leapfrogged me on the track when I didn't want you to, it's still only a game. Take care, and I'll see you next time.